Again, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lillian Rubio. I'm a city planner with the Department of City Planning. I work in our department's Code Studies Citywide Policy Division, and I'm one of the planners working on the city's proposed work program to reinstate an oil ordinance. I am joined by my colleagues Hagu Solomon Carey, Matthew Lum, Stacy Farfan Valencia, Diego Anacua Cortez, Sarai Ortega, Edgar Macedo, and Lance Sierra. I am also joined by Spanish interpreter Diego Hanacua Cortez, who will be leading the Spanish interpretation for today's presentation. Everyone participating over Zoom should select their language as either English or Spanish using the interpretation button at the bottom of the screen. If you need Spanish translation, please join via Zoom. Spanish translation is not available for those calling in. Thank you in advance for your patience, as we may need to pause throughout the presentation to ensure that both languages are synchronized. I will now make an announcement in Spanish for our participants who need Spanish interpretation and who may still be on the English channel. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Lilian Rubio, planeadora del Departamento de Planeación de Los Ángeles y su anfitriona de hoy. Quiero anunciar que tenemos traducción en español disponible usando el botón de interpretación en su pantalla. Es importante tener en cuenta que si está llamando por teléfono, no podrá escuchar la traducción en español. Si necesita traducción en español, por favor, únase por la aplicación de Zoom. El seminario web será traducido en español por Diego Hanacua Cortés. Por favor, use el botón de interpretación para seleccionar español. Before I begin, thank you all for being here today. We truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to meet with us and have the opportunity to present and discuss the important work that the planning department is doing around oil and gas regulations in Los Angeles. This initial meeting is the first of two stakeholder meetings that will take place as an opportunity to understand the proposed work program and provide your valuable feedback as we progress through the legislative process, which will also include a public comment period and environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. While we welcome all public questions, today's meeting is focused on soliciting input as we're still in the beginning stages of this work program. Therefore, we will take questions and comments into consideration as we move forward and incorporate responses into our future staff report and possibly an FAQ. This work is a top priority for us, and we are committed to keeping you informed and engaged throughout the process. Next slide, please. As outlined on this slide, you will notice we have a few things to cover for you all. And then we're hoping to open it up for public comments and/or questions. To begin, I'd like to provide an overview of our department's oil team structure, detailing how our policy and implementation teams collaborate and highlighting some of our key roles. I'll also highlight the crucial roles related to oil regulations that other city departments and outside agencies hold. Next, we will provide some essential context on oil drilling in LA, including the distribution of wells across the city and the documented health impacts associated with oil drilling, particularly on our frontline communities. Well, after that, then we'll delve into the history and key components of our 2022 Oil Ordinance number 187709, including its immediate impacts and the challenges we faced post-adoption, specifically the litigation that led to its rescission. This will naturally lead us into the changes in the state legislative landscape, particularly AB 3233 and SB 1137, and how these laws now empower our local efforts. Following that, I'll outline City Planning's new work program, focused on the readoption of a new oil ordinance. We'll cover important recent milestones, such as the rescission ordinance adoption and the next steps for the ZAI and ZA memo repeal. We'll cover the details of this readoption effort, including why it's our chosen path forward. Finally, we'll close by looking ahead at the timeline and next steps, sharing what our department is thinking about and prioritizing in terms of major milestones for reinstating a new oil and gas drilling ordinance citywide. I will pause here for a second to make sure the Spanish translation has caught up. Thank you everyone for your patience. Next slide, please. To give you a quick overview of our oil work program, we have a robust city planning oil team structure. It's composed of two primary, highly collaborative teams. First, our Code Studies team, who was the lead on the original oil ordinance approved in 2022, and who is now leading the effort for the forthcoming code amendment, which is a readoption work program. Code Studies coordinates and participates in inter and intra-departmental meetings to discuss new regulations and concepts, as well as potential policy amendments. Code Studies is responsible for responding to council and public inquiries regarding oil policy considerations. Lastly, the Code Studies team is also involved in all the follow-up work related to the ordinance, including coordinating with the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration and Safety, which is known as OP and Gas. Beyond that, Code Studies' biggest goal is working closely with the public to ensure all sides and ideas are heard through this new legislative process. On the implementation side, our Office of Zoning Administration, or OZA, leads the charge. Their responsibilities include interagency coordination with the city, county, state agencies like CalJAM, DBS, Fire, and the Water Board. They also monitor and enforce conditions of approval on existing drill sites and review active complaints and nuisance concerns. Importantly, OZA will lead the implementation efforts for the planning processes that coincide with any policy that is created through this new oil ordinance. As you can see here, there's a lot of overlap between our oil policy and implementation work. And these two teams work very closely with one another to ensure a cohesive and effective approach to regulating oil and gas operations in the city. I will give another quick pause here and let the Spanish channel catch up to the current slide of the presentation. Thank you again for your patience. Next slide, please. Outside of the planning department, there are various city departments and outside agencies that regulate oil operations. Here's a few we'd like to highlight. Within the city of LA, the Los Angeles Fire Department, or LAFD for short, Certified Unified Program Agency provides oversight over hazardous materials stored, used, or handled on active drill sites, and also has some jurisdiction on both above and underground storage tanks. LAFD, Oil Wells Unit, regulates inspection around fire, life, and safety, and they review new well applications and abandonment applications. The Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration and Safety, OP and Gas, within the Board of Public Works, provides citywide technical advice on all matters related to the city's legacy petroleum contracts and future site remediation. At the state and regional levels, CalGEM is in charge of overseeing plugging and abandonment of all wells. South Coast Air Quality Management District, SCAQMD, makes sure that the demolition process at these drill sites doesn't pollute the air. And the State Water Board includes geologists, engineers, who oversee the soil cleanup process after a well is abandoned, and identified when the site is safe for the subsequent use. I'll give a pause here. Our Spanish channel is catching up. Thank you for your patience. Next slide, please. So that sets the stage for how oil drilling activities are regulated in the city. Now I'd like to give a quick background on oil drilling in the city. Oil drilling started locally in the late 19th century and escalated in the early 1900s. Today, LA is one of the largest urban oil fields in the country. In LA, there are 26 oil and gas fields and more than 5,000 oil and gas wells. That includes nearly 2,000 that are either active or idle. Wells are found in nearly all parts of the city, including but not limited to Wilmington, Harbor Gateway, downtown, West LA, South LA, and the Northwest San Fernando Valley. Many are in the middle of residential neighborhoods and low-income communities and communities of color who have disproportionately felt the impacts of oil drilling compared to other neighborhoods in the city. Next slide, please. Communities for decades have been raising environmental justice concerns around oil drilling and extraction and the negative health and safety impacts to frontline communities. As mentioned throughout our outreach efforts during the legislative process for Oil Ordinance number 187709, there are numerous studies that have illustrated how oil and gas extraction activities are associated with negative health and safety impacts, especially when they occur in close proximity to sensitive uses, including residencies. In addition to the documented health impacts of drilling, oil and gas extraction sites have demonstrated to have negative land use effects for local residents that include elevated noise levels, increased exposure to emissions, strong odor events, and transportation traffic circulation issues. Next slide, please. In 2022, our department spearheaded a significant policy effort that culminated in the adoption of the city's historic oil and gas drilling ordinance, number 187709. This ordinance was a direct response to Council File number 17-0447, which acknowledged the documented health impacts of oil drilling in residential neighborhoods, particularly on our frontline communities. After an extensive legislative process, the City Council adopted the ordinance on December 2nd, 2022, and it officially became effective on January 18, 2023. Its key provisions were clear. It immediately banned all new oil drilling citywide and initiated a 20-year phase-out of all existing drilling operations. This meant that under this ordinance, all existing oil wells were reclassified as non-conforming uses. They were generally prohibited from being maintained, drilled, re-drilled, or deepened, with narrow exceptions only to work essential to prevent or respond to immediate threats to public health, safety, or the environment. To support the ordinance implementation, City Planning's Office of Zoning Administration, OZA, prepared two crucial documents. First, a zoning administrator's interpretation, which is a ZAI for short. This ZAI was created to specifically interpret what drill site activities would qualify as well maintenance. It defined well maintenance as any scope of work requiring either a rework permit from CalGEM or online notification per South Coast Air Quality Management District Rule 1148.2. Second, a zoning administrator memo number 141. This memo established the specific processes for health and safety exception projects. It outlined the procedures and policies for accepting and processing applications for projects at existing non-conforming sites, where drilling, re-drilling, deepening, or well maintenance was proposed to prevent or respond to a threat to public health, safety, or the environment. This applied to all citywide oil wells, including those formerly by right operations in the M3 zone. I will pause here to give the Spanish channel some time to catch up to this current slide. Thank you everyone for your patience. Next slide, please. The implementation of Ordinance number 187709 faced challenges. Not only was the ZAI subject to a long appeal process, but immediately following the adoption of the ordinance, 6 lawsuits were filed against the ordinance and all accompanied documents by various oil operators and groups, including Warren, EMB, NARL, NASCO, and Bridgeland. The validity of Oil Ordinance number 187709, the ZAI, and ZA Memo number 141 were all litigated. The court ultimately ruled that state law preempted local municipalities from regulating how oil and gas extraction happens. This created a challenge to our local authority. However, after the court ruling, a significant shift in the state legislative landscape occurred with the passage of Assembly Bill 3233. This bill, which became effective on January 1st of 2025, is vital because it reaffirms and clarifies the authority of local governments to regulate, limit, or prohibit oil and gas operations within their jurisdictions. Next slide, please. Given the court's ruling and the new legislative context, the city was required to take specific actions regarding Ordinance number 187709. On January 15, 2025, the City Council, acting on the City Attorney's recommendation, approved entering into a stipulated judgment. This agreement required the city to take steps to rescind Oil Ordinance number 187709, along with the supporting documents, the ZAI and ZA Memo number 141. Importantly, the judgment preserved the city's right to enact future oil and gas ordinances in light of the new authority granted by AB 3233. The rescission ordinance was heard at the Plum Committee on May 13th, 2025. Subsequently, the formal rescission of Oil Ordinance number 187709 by the City Council occurred on May 23rd, 2025. The mayor's concurrence and approval was executed on June 2nd, 2025. This action necessitates a temporary return to the city's pre-existing oil regulations in the Los Angeles Municipal Code. Concurrently, City Planning's OZA also moved forward with the rescission of ZAI and the ZA Memo number 141, which was officially released on May 29th, 2025. Next slide, please. Since entering into the stipulated judgment, City Planning has been working in earnest to present and readopt a new oil and gas drilling ordinance under the authority of AB 3233. This is a top priority, and we're working diligently to move this forward. The content of the ordinance we hope to bring forward through this work program is likely not to change significantly from the original, which means much of the policy work has already been vetted. That said, we're still working to finalize our environmental analysis. At this time, we intend to update the initial study as part of the CEQA process, and based on our findings, circulate any subsequent documents. Building on our past experience, our department believes readopting the original oil and gas drilling ordinance is the most effective and efficient path forward for several critical reasons. We want to highlight the importance of readopting the framework behind Oil Ordinance number 187709 with some minor modifications. Most importantly, this process will reiterate the city's intent to uphold the prohibition of new oil drilling citywide and reestablish the non-conforming status for existing uses, initiating a clear 20-year phase-out period for all oil and gas activities citywide. This is our fundamental goal. We've learned valuable lessons from the implementation of the past oil ordinance. These lessons learned have demonstrated that the initial ordinance was largely successful in providing transparency for the public and operators regarding oil operations and regulations. We aim to maintain and enhance this. We also learned the importance of having clear, precise, and consistent terminology within the ordinance to minimize ambiguity and potential legal challenges. This again is something we want to maintain and enhance as part of the current legislative process for this new ordinance. Lastly, the readoption process allows us to ensure ordinance is meticulously aligned with current state, regional, and local laws, operational realities, and oversight frameworks, especially in light of AB 3233. I will make a pause here and have the Spanish channel catch up. Thank you, everybody. Next slide, please. Earlier in the presentation, we spoke about AB 3233 and how it provides our city with a clear state level foundation to enact ordinances to protect public health, safety, and the environment from impacts of oil and gas activities. While AB 3233 directly provides the legal authority for local governments like the City of LA to regulate and prohibit oil and gas operations, Senate Bill 1137 complements our work program efforts as it reinforces the scientific and public health basis for such regulations, especially regarding setbacks. SB 1137 was passed in 2022 and changes the way we look at oil and gas operations. SB 1137 establishes a 3,200-foot health and safety setback zone around new or reworked oil and gas wells, prohibiting them near sensitive receptors. Its intent underscores the state's growing recognition of the public health impacts of oil and gas operations. The state actions, both through AB 3233 and SB 1137, provide a strong foundation of local regulatory efforts. To that end, our department is committed to being in line with existing state policy. Next slide, please. We are working diligently to respond to the city's council instructions within a short period, while adhering to all legal and procedural requirements. Here are the major milestones for the legislative process. Today's initial meeting, known as the first stakeholder meeting, is crucial for gathering input and fulfilling requirements under the court stipulated judgment. Following that, we anticipate the draft ordinance will be released, accompanied by the required California Environmental Quality Act environmental clearance for public and agency review. Our target for this is midsummer of 2025. Then we will issue a notice of public hearing, which will be provided 24 days prior to the City Planning Commission hearing, as required by our municipal code for zoning code amendments. A second stakeholder meeting will be held no later than 15 days prior to the City Planning Commission hearing to address any final feedback. The official public comment period will conclude approximately 3 weeks before the City Planning Commission meeting to allow for incorporation of those comments into the City Planning Commission staff report. Public comments will continue to be allowed after that, and we will announce a closure of comments that planning staff could receive to incorporate as part of the staff report that is submitted to City Planning Commission's consideration. Lastly, our target is to hold a public hearing and bring a proposed ordinance and recommendation report to the City Planning Commission by fall of 2025. We know this process is robust, but we're committed to moving it forward efficiently to establish permanent, protective regulations for our city. Thank you, everyone, for your patience while the Spanish channel catches up. All right, next slide, please. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Now we would like to open up the floor and join both the Spanish and English channels into one main channel so that everyone can hear one another's comments and feedback. All right. As a reminder, we are taking comments and feedback verbally and any questions via the Q&A function on Zoom, which should be available in just a second. Okay, you should be able to see the Q&A function, which will allow you to submit questions. All right, so les recordamos que los comentarios y sugerencias se reciben verbalmente y cualquier pregunta se puede hacer a través de la sección de preguntas y respuestas de Zoom. All right, so at this time, please feel free to raise your hand to provide comments and feedback or write in questions in the Q&A box for our benefit and consideration. We are here to listen to your feedback and thoughts, and we aim to take the questions you submit into the Q&A box under advisement at this early stage of our process and respond in a more thoughtful and formal way in our staff report. Anyone wishing to provide a verbal comment or feedback on this work program are invited to do so at this time. If you would like to speak, please press star 9 on your phone or the raise hand icon on the Zoom app. To ensure that you are heard clearly, please be mindful of background noise. To ensure everyone has an opportunity to speak, please try to limit your comment and or feedback to 2 minutes. Extended comments may be submitted in writing. Please try to limit the length of your comments, very important, and keep them related to the subject matter of this meeting. All right, so now we will begin the feedback portion of this meeting. The feedback session will include the opportunity for the public to provide comments, feedback, or ask questions regarding the proposed work program. If we're not able to get to you today in this forum, you can reach out to planning staff with any feedback or questions by emailing planning.oildrilling@lacity.org. Through this forum today, we will be accepting verbal comments and separately questions via the Q&A feature on Zoom, which is located at the bottom of your screen. So, solo comenzaremos ahora la sesión de retroalimentación de esta reunión. Esta sección permitirá al público compartir sus comentarios, sugerencias o preguntas sobre el programa de trabajo propuesto. Si no podemos atenderlos hoy en este foro, pueden comunicarse con el personal de planeación. Para cualquier comentario o pregunta enviado a un correo electrónico que aparece en su pantalla es planning.oildrilling@lacity.org. En este foro aceptaremos comentarios verbales y por separado preguntas a través de la función de preguntas y respuestas de Zoom, ubicada en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Again, those who wish to speak, please click on the raise hand button located at the bottom of your screen, or if you're participating over the phone, press star 9. Una vez más, los que desean hablar deben hacer clic en el botón de raise hand ubicado en la parte inferior de su pantalla, o si está participando por teléfono, presione estrella 9. Okay, Stacy, we'll call on one speaker at a time, either by name or by the last 3 digits of the phone number to provide their comment and or feedback. You will see or hear a prompt stating that the host would like you to unmute. Please click unmute on your device, or if you're calling in, press star 9 to unmute. You will then be able to provide your comment. Please state your name before starting your comment and try to limit your comment to 2 minutes so that everyone has the opportunity to speak today. After you have the opportunity to speak, you will be removed from the speaker queue and muted.
Thank you, Lillian. The first person we have with the raised hand is Laura Gracia.
Please go ahead, Laura Gracia.
Hello, my name is Laura Gracia. I'm with Communities for a Better Environment. Thank you for the presentation. I urge the zoning administrator to reissue the interpretation on well maintenance that would regulate toxic acid maintenance operations. This is an extremely urgent public health threat for frontline communities living near active oil drilling. I'm in a room with about 50 community members right now. It's really amazing and people are really being impacted, and the city needs to take strong action. And by doing that, they can again reissue the zoning administrator's interpretation on well maintenance and also create a plan for long-term cleanup of sites. So while the city prepares a new oil phase-out ordinance, it's important for the city to plan ahead for the closure of these sites and the need for stricter regulations around the closure and cleanup of the sites. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Laura. I'm gonna be calling on the next three speakers. The next three speakers will be Margarita Hernandez, Tiana Shaw Wakeman, and Sylvia Arredondo. So let me start with Margarita. Margarita, I'm gonna unmute yourself. Please feel free to unmute yourself.
En Wilmington. Estoy aquí para pedir que la ciudad reactive la ordenanza que prohíbe nuevos pozos en Los Ángeles lo antes posible. No esperen más.
Margarita, we can't hear you.
Margaritas, se cortó. ¿Puede
Listo.
volver a decir su comentario,
Sí,
por
mi
favor?
nombre es Margarita Hernández, vivo en Wilmington. Estoy aquí para pedir que la ciudad reactive la ordenanza que prohíbe nuevos pozos en Los Ángeles lo antes posible. No esperen más. Nosotros estamos sufriendo por la contaminación de los pozos, refinadoras y otras fuentes. Nuestra salud ha sido afectada seriamente. Hace 4 años fui diagnosticada con un tipo de cáncer raro y yo soy sobreviviente de cáncer. Una vecina mía murió de cáncer en diciembre y tengo otra vecina que tiene cáncer ahora. Vivir cerca de los pozos que usan químicos peligrosos. Estoy segura que tienen que ver con las enfermedades que padecemos. Es necesario que la ciudad reactive la ordenanza ya. Y si ustedes no cortan el tiempo para que los pozos cierren, es posible que no lo veré. Pero quiero que mi hija y mis nietos vivan sin esas operaciones que pueden afectar su salud como me afectó a mí. Gracias.
Thank you, Margarita. Okay,
Stacy, before we move on, I would like to summarize Margarita's comment just for everyone else's sake. As a summary, not word by word, but we do have it on record. She lives in Wilmington and she would like for the city to activate the oil drilling immediately, to not wait any longer. She has experienced, rare cancer herself, and she does have neighbors that have had it also in December. They live close to wells and they just feel like it's necessary to activate the ordinance as fast as possible so that she can see immediate change for her kids and grandchildren one day. Thank you.
thank you, Lillian. The next speaker we have is Tiana. Tiana, please unmute yourself and please provide your name and state your comment.
Hello, my name is Tiana Shaw Wakeman, and I serve as the Environmental Justice Director with local nonprofit Black Women for Wellness, as well as the steering committee member of Stand Together Against Neighborhood Drilling LA, Stand LA. I want to commend the city on working to readopt this important oil phase-out ordinance, and I encourage you all to act swiftly to support the health and well-being of Angelenos on the front lines of toxic oil extraction. In Stand LA, we've engaged in Toxic Tours, a program familiar to many EJ environmental justice communities, where we bring folks on a bus to see neighborhood oil drilling and to hear from impacted residents. Every time I've been part of one of these tours, spoken in these tours, I hear the same things. How could this be allowed? Who is allowing this next to children? You're kidding. There's active oil drilling in Los Angeles. Every time there is sheer shock that our city is allowing toxic, life-altering industrial neighborhood oil drilling next to schools, parks, and families, next to people. I ask that we move swiftly to right this wrong that should have been righted long ago. And I also ask that we ensure oil companies do not shirk their responsibilities to properly plug and clean up oil wells so that the shock that we currently hear when people hear about toxic oil drilling is not replaced in the future by shock that oil companies were then allowed to not clean up their mess. So I thank you and I commend the city on this ordinance, and I look forward to it being swiftly adopted, to the timeline being short, and to ensuring also that oil companies clean up the mess that they have created. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tiana. The next speaker we have is Silvia Arredondo. Silvia, please unmute yourself and state your name for the record and provide your comment.
Hi, Sylvia. We're not able to hear you. Not sure if you're speaking. O si quiere hacer su comentario en español, no lo podemos oír. Stacy, can you call the
Okay,
next
maybe you can
person?
hear me now.
Oh, yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, cool. Sylvia Arredondo, lifelong Wilmington resident, in Council District 15, living and growing up next to neighborhood oil drilling wells has been my whole life and my family's. And I'm here to say that, we need to reissue the zoning administrator's interpretation on oil well maintenance. Many of the chemicals that have been used during acid maintenance, including xylene, polyethylbenzenes, and methanol, are linked to long-term health impacts, which my family suffers from, a lot of my friends, and neighbors. And some of these health impacts include endocrine disruption, cancers, birth defects, that impact our quality of life and well-being. And so we need to make sure that our communities have justice, that there's no further delays in delivering clean air and environmental justice for communities living on the fence lines of neighborhood oil drilling, and continuing to allow for 20 years is unacceptable. This continues to foster environmental racism for another generation of Black and Latina Angelinos. So thank you so much for your time. Yeah.
Thank you, Sylvia. The next three
Oh.
speakers.
No.
The next three speakers we have are Brittany Rivas, Patricia de la Torre, and Florencia Garcia. Brittany, can you please unmute yourself and state your name for the record and provide your comment?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Brittany Rivas, and I am the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Enhancement Coordinator at Communities for a Better Environment. Ultimately, we need to see that the zoning administrator interpretation on well maintenance is reissued. Operators have taken advantage of the ordinance being overturned to issue dozens of notices for acid maintenance operations. Acid maintenance is a technique that uses thousands of gallons of strong acids like hydrofluoric or hydrochloric acid to dissolve rock formations and clean out wellbores. Many of the chemicals used during acid maintenance, including xylene, polyethylbenzenes, and methanol, are linked to long-term health impacts, including endocrine disruption, cancer, and birth defects. I urge the zoning administrator to reissue the interpretation on well maintenance that would regulate toxic acid maintenance operations. This is an urgent, extremely urgent public health threat for frontline communities living near active oil drilling, like the folks I work with here in Wilmington. And also, y'all need to be able to clean up the sites of contamination for us to have healthy and safe communities. So while the city prepares a new oil phase out ordinance, it's also important for the city to plan ahead for the closure for these sites, and the need for stricter regulations around the closure and cleanup of them. And then ultimately that when these sites are shut down and cleaned up, it's important for the oil operators to be held accountable for the cost of cleanup and for the cleanup to happen in a community engaged and safe, thorough manner, not just checking a box, being able to talk to residents, going door to door, and all the other methods in order to truly engage community. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
The next person we have is Patricia de la Torre. Patricia, can you unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and provide your comment? Patricia, can you hear us? I'm sorry, Patricia, if you're trying to talk, we can't hear you. And yeah, please unmute yourself. If not, we can come back to you after a few more speakers.
Ok. Mi nombre es Patricia de la Torre. Yo vivo en Wilmington. Tengo 42 años residiendo en Wilmington. ¿Me escuchas?
Sí.
Ok. Este, necesitamos que la ciudad sea responsable por la salud pública, aplicar normativas a las compañías mineras que por años han operado sus pompas junto a los hogares, en Boys and Girls, cerca de las escuelas. El gas que usan para limpiar los pozos es muy dañino para la salud y lo hacen muy seguido sin avisarnos. Ya es hora de que renueven la ordenanza que prohíbe dar permisos para nuevos pozos para minas y gas, petróleo en la LLA, a menos de que estén a 3,200 pies de hogares, escuelas, clínicas, lugares donde pueden afectar la salud. Basado en el gobierno decretado que lo arrojan, causa dolor de garganta, sangrado de la nariz, ardor de ojos, alergias, empeora el asma, respiran por los años, pueden afectar el embarazo, deficiencia a los fetos, infertilidad, aún diferentes cánceres del pulmón y sangre. Necesitamos que la ciudad sea responsable. Queremos que reanuden ya no más pozos cerca de donde vivimos, estudiamos y nos recreamos. Yo tengo una condición de mis pulmones, estoy muy afectada, estoy padeciendo día con día de esta condición y no estoy feliz. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Gracias, Patricia. Just to summarize Patricia's comment for everyone's sake, she also lives in Wilmington. She wants the city to take responsibility of, making sure, well, well sites are not near residencies, for mineral companies to be responsible for the maintenance and cleanup work they do. Make sure that, well sites are not within 30 to 100 feet from a sensitive use site. Um, and that because they cause health impacts, she named a few: asthma, nosebleeds, infertility, lung cancers. And then she did say, she re-emphasized cities should be responsible to have no more wells near residencies. And she has been suffering of conditions due to her health. So thank you so much, Muchas gracias, Patricia.
The next speaker we have is Florencia Garcia. Florencia, please unmute yourself and provide your name and comment.
Ya. Buenas tardes, soy Florencia García. Vivo en Wilmington hace más de 30 años. Ya es hora de que la ciudad reactive las ordenanzas que prohíben nuestros nuevos pozos en Los Ángeles. Aquí tenemos la mayoría de pozos junto a nuestros hogares, escuelas, centros infantiles y más. La contaminación nos afecta mucho la salud. Nuestros niños tienen asma, faltan a la escuela por no poder respirar. Somos pobres y por eso tenemos que vivir rodeados de pozos petroleros, refinadoras, tráfico de camiones del puerto y muchas más. No tarden más y corten el tiempo de cerrar los pozos existentes, porque tienen que darles otros 20, porque tienen que darle otros 20 años para cerrar, ya que ganaron suficiente, ya destruyeron nuestra salud y el medio ambiente. Queremos que nuestros niños no tengan más que vivir, estudiar y jugar junto a pozos contaminadores. Espero espero tomen en cuenta mi opinión. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Florencia. For everyone's sake, Florencia is also from Wilmington. She's been living there 30 years. She would like to reactivate the ordinance that prohibits well sites near sensitive uses, like schools, parks, residencies. She has stated that it affects health. It's caused children to have asthma, kids mid school because of this. She mentions, they're of low income and that, she thinks that, there's a lot of activity that goes on the well sites that affects health. She does say she would like the city to close existing wells. And why give another 20 years to the closeout? They have destroyed their environment as is, and she would like to see her children be able to play out near well sites. Thank you. Muchas gracias, Florencia.
Thank you, Lillian. The next three speakers we have are Abe Powell, Ruth Andrade, and Nicholas Gardner. Let me start with Abe Powell. Abe Powell, can you unmute and state your name and your comment, please? Abe Powell, I'm not sure if you're trying to speak, but we can't hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, thank you. My name is A. Powell. I'm speaking as a stakeholder in the Harbor Gateway North. I agree with all the other speakers previously about this ordinance. They need to stop the oil drilling and close at the wells in sensitive use areas, because we have stakeholders complaining about the drilling in sensitive areas. And so they need to take this ordinance seriously, and they need to be transparent, because we've been dealing with a particular resident here in our area about certain things. So I'm happy that they bring this forward so they can address this issue and be transparent as to what's going on in the area. Thank you for letting me comment. Thank you. And I appreciate all the other people giving their input about this. And this is a serious matter impacting people's health throughout, California and also LA City. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person we have is Ruth Andrade. Ruth, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment, please.
Hola, muy buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Ru Andrade, organizadora comunitaria en ESCO y también de Esta Ley. Más que todo, exijo, ¿verdad? Que pase rápido la ordenanza, no más pozos de petróleo, ya que por hace ya más de 20 años tuvimos esto y logramos un poquito, no de mucho, ¿verdad? Al cual a mí me ha afectado demasiado el tener 3 pozos de petróleo cerca de mi casa y que sí, o que los que perforan esta tierra ni siquiera dan aviso. Y hay tantas enfermedades a cual yo sufro de asma, sufro lo que es también dolor de cabeza. Tengo vecinos que han fallecido y no nada más gente grande, sino también lo que son niños, muchachos que empiezan a vivir su vida. Entonces no queremos que nos enferme más nuestra comunidad con estos pozos de petróleo que están cerca, pero también lo que queremos nosotros, más que todo, que cuando se hagan estas perforaciones o cuando queremos que se limpie la tierra, ¿verdad? Cuando ya salgan, ya quiten los pozos de petróleo y los cierran, queremos que también nos den un aviso, porque todo eso exhalamos y nosotros ni siquiera sabemos cuando vamos para afuera. La necesidad es de volver a emitir la interpretación de administración de zonificación sobre el mantenimiento de pozos. Los operadores han aprovechado de la anulación de la ordenanza para emitir docenas de avisos para llevar a cabo operaciones de mantenimiento con ácido. El mantenimiento de ácido es una técnica que utiliza miles de galones de ácidos fuertes como el ácido fluorhídrico o el ácido clorhídrico para disolver las formaciones rocosas y limpiar los pozos. Muchos de los productos químicos se utilizan durante el mantenimiento del ácido, como el sileno, los polietilbenceros y mentrol, están realmente a plazo como las alteraciones endóticas, el cáncer y los defectos cangénicos. Entonces, pedimos, por favor, que de inmediatamente, y no esperar más, que aprueben la ordenanza, no más pozos de petróleo. No queremos que nuestras generaciones se enfermen más de lo que ya estamos nosotros. Entonces, exijo todo eso, la necesidad de contaminaciones a largo plazo de los sitios, mientras la ciudad prepara una nueva ordenanza de eliminación gradual de petróleo. También es importante que la ciudad planifique con anticipación el cierre de estos sitios y la necesidad de regularizar más estrictas en torno al cierre y la limpieza de los sitios. Cuando los sitios se cierren y se limpien, es importante que los operadores de petróleo se hagan responsables de los costos de la limpieza, a que la limpieza se realice a manera comprometida con la comunidad segura y exhausta. Gracias.
Gracias.
Yeah, thank you, Stacy and Ruth. Just to summarize Ruth's comment, she's a community organizer, part of Stand LA. She would love to have this ordinance get passed. She does not want any more well sites. Years have passed. Years passed when we approved the first ordinance. She felt like they progressed a bit, but of course, she would want to see the closure of the well sites. Those that drill, she has mentioned that those that drill operators don't give enough notice. Living near well sites have produced headaches. She has neighbors that have passed away, not just elderly people, but also very young people. She doesn't want this operation to continue to make them sick. She would like to see that when the cleanup and plugging of well sites, that operators give proper notice, or those in charge give proper notice. She would also love a reissuance of the ZAI to prevent, any well maintenance that could be, affecting the health. She does go into detail of acid maintenance and what that work looks like. So again, no more wells, and she would like to ensure that the next generation is able to enjoy their environment. She would like to see, while we're working on the oil ordinance, a site cleanup and closure plan, and again, re-emphasize that when the cleanup and plugging is happening, there should be proper notice and make sure to talk to the residents and have an engagement. Okay, thank you so much, Ruth. Gracias.
The next speaker we have is Nicholas Gardner. Nicholas, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicholas Gardner. I'm with the Sunrise Movement Los Angeles. I'm currently a resident of District 1. I am greatly encouraged by the city council's directions on the oil phase out ordinance, and I urge the city to move with every possible speed to get this done. You know, I live in Northeast LA now, but I grew up in the harbor. I grew up next to the Wilmington, San Pedro, Long Beach, and South Bay oil fields. And I know firsthand the health impacts of living near these operations. You know, there's multiple members of my family that suffer from asthma. I myself suffer from chronic illnesses due to our proximity to these oil fields. So this could, you know, oil drilling has absolutely no place in our communities. As the city puts together this ordinance, you know, we hope that as you put it together, you will consider the need for long-term cleanup of the sites so that, you know, our communities aren't left paying the price, and that also you consider a reduced and more expedited phase out timeline. 20 years is just far too much for the price our communities have been paying. You know, as much as we want to build a better world in the future, all of us here also deserve to live in a better world right now without being poisoned by oil drilling. So we urge an expedited timeline. And even in the interim, as this is being put together, we would urge the city and the zoning administrator to reissue the interpretation on well maintenance to ensure that toxic acid maintenance operations are no longer harming our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicholas. The next three speakers that we have are Morgan Gonzalez, Robert Roy, and Alvin Waters. I'll start with Morgan. Morgan, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment.
Hi, good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Morgan.
My name is Morgan Gonzalez. I'm a resident of Wilmington, and I'm here representing Communities for a Better Environment as well as a volunteer. For over 100 years, my family has lived in Wilmington. My great-grandfather, Candelario, was blessed with a very long life. And in my youth, he would tell me about the stories about the Wilmington literally getting paved. He was working in the lumber industry here in Los Angeles when there was a lumber industry in the city. And there, in all that time, there isn't a person in Wilmington that remembers since his passing a time before the refineries. It's always been trucks, it's been refineries, it's been oil wells. My grandfather suffered from respiratory harms, asthma, that persisted well into his old age. My father as well. I had very severe childhood asthma. It's generational. And again, for over 100 years, this has been going on. And I would like to see the period of amortization, the 20 years, be reduced so that one day my children could settle here in Wilmington without the fear of oil wells, benzenes, carcinogens actively being put into our air. The tactile feeling of the grit, the heat, the smell in Wilmington is something that I want to see end. I want to see our health prioritized, our communities prioritized, our schools, our churches. So for that reason, please reduce the amount of time from 20 years. And I do want to commend the city for really driving this fight home. And thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. The next speaker we have is Robert Roy. Robert, please unmute yourself, state your name for the record and your comment.
Hello, it took just a moment to get unmuted. My name is Robert Roy Fundehoek, and I'm an environmental scientist, and I live in Playa del Rey and in Sylmar, both in the city of LA. I thought you had a very professional overview. I think that the presentations in Spanish are excellent to be inclusive, and that you translate them for us in English. Thank you. But how about also translating our English comments into Spanish, starting with me, if you'd like. I want to say that the Playa del Rey oil field is where there's a SoCal gas operation, and it may be that you are thinking that it should be excluded because it's gas wells, but the gas is stored in an oil field. So when the gas is being vacuumed up, the methane gas, it's also bringing up oil with it. That makes the gas contaminated and has to do all kinds of cleaning. And there's a There's a low income single woman minority public residence within the about 1,000 feet of this area in Mar Vista and Del Rey communities, suburbs next to Playa del Rey. And even people who are cleaning people's wealthy homes in the Playa del Rey area would be likely low income, Spanish speaking, minority people who are doing the cleaning and getting exposed as well. Regarding recreation, I'd like you to list that there's a lot of people that like to go viewing wildlife and wildflowers, endangered species, and includes Audubon, Xerces Society, Lorquin Entomological Society, Southwest Herpetological Society, and California Native Plant Society. And many low-income minority people go on tours to the wetlands with the school children. And interestingly, the State Ecological Reserve has an amphitheater where 30 to 50 kids will come off the school bus and sit down to listen about nature. And right behind the bushes, less than 50 feet away, is an active oil well field, and there has been an oil spill there at times. And the children and the parents that are and the teachers are never informed about this happening on the state land of the Bayona Wetlands State Ecological Reserve. I think that legally, the SoCal Gas Company should be open and transparent and asking for their gas field to be included in the restrictions that you have on the AB 3233. And I do like that the state assembly and the Senate have given local authority back to the city of LA. But keep in mind, the state still does also have authority, and cities are only here at the leisure, and county governments are at the leisure of the state of California. Cities and counties exist under the state constitution, so the state does have the overall oversight of every city, municipality, and county, 50 plus counties in our state, FYI. And there's more, but I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. I did want to address really quickly about your comment of translating English to Spanish comments. I think would be our preference as well, but just given the time we have allocated, that would be really long at this point, and we want to hear from as many people as possible. But our intent is to be transparent. So if there's anyone out there that speaks Spanish and would like to hear like summaries of the English comments, we are taking these into record. We are listening to you, so we can provide that. And just for me to provide that in Spanish, si hay alguien que nos está escuchando en español y quisiera saber qué están diciendo en inglés, hoy no podemos traducirlo de inglés a español porque es mucha gente, pero si quieren saber más información, mándenme un correo electrónico o llámenme. Pueden escribir un correo electrónico a planning.oildrilling@lacity.org. Aparece en la pantalla y yo con mucho gusto los ayudo. Gracias. Thank you so much. And then I also want to, before we continue our comments, I do want to mention it's now 6:39 p.m. Our end time of our scheduled meeting for today was 6:30 p.m. However, I do see that we have more people wishing to speak at this time, and we really want to hear from as many people as possible today. So I will go ahead and continue taking comments, feedback, let's say until 7:30 p.m. and hopefully we can wrap that up by then. But thank you so much for your patience. Son las 6:39 p.m. La hora de finalización de nuestra reunión era a las 6:30 p.m., pero sin embargo veo que hay más personas que quieren hablar, así que queremos tratar de escuchar a la mayor cantidad de la gente, así que seguiré recibiendo comentarios hasta las 7:30 p.m. I hope this works out. Thank you guys, and Stacy, if you could please call on the next speaker. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lillian. The next speaker we had is Alvin Waters. Alvin, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment.
Yes, can you all hear me?
We can hear you, Alvin. Yes.
Okay, so my name is Alvin Waters. I'm the chair of the Energy Committee of the Los Angeles Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. Um, I'm just here today to stand and encourage the city of LA to move on this ordinance, and to also encourage to also expedite the phase out. I'm standing in solidarity as a resident of Granada Hills adjacent to the Porter Ranch area. So I'm very familiar with a lot of the sicknesses that many of the stakeholders talked about. I'm currently actually following the 5-year Aliso Canyon Disaster Health Study Plan, and all of the sicknesses that are being called out is very similar. We do not want to see another reactive approach to this. The other thing to keep in mind too is that we just had our city budget decimated, and there's been a lot of payouts due to lawsuits for this. So looking at this from a risk management perspective, as well as also an environmental perspective, that if we don't act now, we will continue to pay for it. We will continue to pay out. This will continue to decimate our budget. But furthermore, for a lot of the residents, it's already this has been going on for 20 years. I'm basically seeing a repeat of what's going on up here in Granada Hills and Porter Ranch. We definitely don't want it to get to the point where we've had to wait almost 10 years for a study. So that's why by me standing in solidarity and sharing this example, we definitely need to act now. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. The next three speakers we have is Emilza Guzman, Ashley Hernandez, and Sofia Duarte. Let me start with Emilza. Emilza, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment.
Can you hear me?
It's very faint.
Oh, sorry.
Now we can hear you better.
Okay. My name is Emilza Guzman, and I'm a youth leader for Communities for a Better Environment, and I'm also a resident in Wilmington. Oil drilling has impacted me because I can't escape it in my city. It surrounds my school, it surrounds the places I shop, and the parks that I go to, even after school centers. And simply, oil drilling should never be near these areas. Oil drilling is harmful to our health, and they are in places that harm our most vulnerable. That is why city leaders must continue to advance a just transition away from fossil fuels that protects the health and safety and well-being of community and workers. I urge the city to readopt the oil phase-out ordinance and protect communities from the impacts of neighborhood oil drilling. Thank you.
Thank you, Emilza. The next speaker we have is Ashley Hernandez. Ashley, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment, please.
Hello, my name is Ashley Hernandez. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ashley.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm a resident in Wilmington, California, and I'm also an organizer with Communities for a Better Environment. I live around 400 feet from one of the largest drill sites in the West Coast. And on January 2024, Warren EMP, this drilling operation, had an explosion with a 30-foot geyser of crude oil that exploded into my community. On this day, restaurant workers, business patrons were exposed to crude sludge that covered cars, plants, tables on our main street. Majority of the restaurant goers were sequestered in a restaurant for over 4 hours, and staff at the restaurant were cleaning crude sludge with dish rags. This was followed by over 40 permits requested for acid maintenance right next to my home and a Little League baseball field. This is a deliberate attack on our efforts and our public health. Like before, local operators failed to notify residents about the impacts or even the well maintenance they were doing. These are the kind of bad actors we don't need in our city. This is the most recent example of the reality we are facing as residents living next to neighborhood oil drilling. Neighborhood oil drilling does not belong in our city. It is a thing of the past, and our workers and community members deserve the best jobs, the best neighbors, and the best for our city. I urge the zoning administrator to reissue the interpretation of well maintenance that would regulate toxic acid maintenance operations. This is an urgent public health threat for frontline residents living near active oil drilling. The site that I live next to has been operating with an expired permit since 2018, and they have been spewing around 4 million pounds of cancer-causing chemicals, 4.6 million pounds of endocrine disruptors that are harming the hormones in our bodies. This is an issue that we are dealing with since December of last year, and Big Oil has taken notice of a judge overturning our policy, our ordinance that was pushed through hard efforts and a democratic process. We deserve to see the progress in our city, and we do not deserve to continue to experience the attacks from Big Oil. Finally, research finds that 74% of the residents living within 1,500 feet from an active oil well are people of color. 42% live 200% below the federal poverty line, and 56% of our folks are renters. Paired with a lack of access to adequate healthcare and historical impacts of redlining on air quality means that communities that in these areas are more vulnerable to pollution impacts due to neighborhood oil drilling. We need a new city ordinance now. We fought for AB 32, and now we need the city to work with those in the public that want healthier communities. We need a new phase-out policy and a fast phase-out to stop delaying the progress for our most impacted Angelenos. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. The next speaker we have is Sofia Duarte. Sofia, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment. Sophia, if you're trying to speak, we can't hear you. Can you please try unmuting yourself? Sorry, Sophia, we still can't hear you. If you're having technical issues, maybe you would like to rejoin the meeting.
Hello?
Okay, great. Now we
Okay.
hear you, Sophia.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Sophia, a lifelong Wilmington resident and also a staff member with Communities for a Better Environment. I urge the city to reduce the phase-out timeline to the shortest, most health protective timeline possible. An overwhelming body of scientific evidence confirms that oil drilling harms people's health. The chemicals emitted from oil extraction are linked to nosebleeds, headaches, nausea, asthma, preterm birth defects, and other reproductive harms, lung and other cancers, and many other health harms. You know of these health harms, but I know the people. My family, my friends, and my neighbors have been diagnosed with leukemia and other cancers. I can't even count how many of my loved ones have unfortunately lost their battles to cancer. I urge the city to move to swiftly readopt the oil phase-out ordinance and protect my communities from the devastating impacts of neighborhood oil drilling. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sophia. The next three speakers we have are Rita Torres, Hector Barajas, and Zoe. Sorry, Zoe, I can't pronounce your last name, but we will start with Rita. Rita, please unmute yourself, state your name, and please provide your comment.
Mi nombre es Rita Torres, vivo en Wilmington. Pido que se renueven las ordenanzas para que prohibir nuevos pozos petroleros, los que tenemos muchos en Wilmington. A mí me afectan mucho, soy cerca de ellos, estoy cerquita de la casa, señorita, es mucho problema para mis niños y para mí. Yo ya soy una señora grande, enferma, y mis niños están chiquitos. Entonces yo quisiera que quitaran todo eso, que es mucha cosa que nos perjudica a todos, es una enfermedad para todos. Es todo, señorita. Gracias.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias, Rita. So a summary of Rita's Torres' comment is she's also a resident from Wilmington. She would love for the city to reactivate the oil ordinance to prohibit wells. There's a lot of oil wells in Wilmington. She says she's near them. She feels like she's elderly, she's older, she has children that are very young. So she would like to have these all be gone eventually. Thank you. Muchas gracias, Rita.
Next speaker we have is Hector Barajas. Hector, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment.
Perfect, thank you. My name is Hector Barajas. I'm a spokesperson for the native oil producers and employees of California. Given that this ordinance here in the city of Los Angeles will be replaced with more imported oil coming in from Iraq and the tearing down of the Amazon rainforest, it is imperative that the city of Los Angeles conduct a full CEQA and do a full-blown EIR to evaluate and mitigate the environmental harms that will come with increased foreign tanker traffic. In addition, like Florencia said, she talked about los camiones. That is what's going to happen when we start importing more oil coming in from foreign countries. We already start seeing that traffic coming in through our ports. In addition, the city's revised oil well ordinance is in violation of the vested property rights and regulatory overreach. Now, it is important, like the other gentleman indicated, that the city of Los Angeles is already in a $1 billion deficit. And so it is going to have to contend with how is it going to deal with the takings under the Fifth Amendment and also under Article 1, Section 19 of the California Constitution. And when we start looking at this particular issue, we need to really take into consideration that this idea of no more oil wells, limiting maintenance on existing wells, and looking at phasing out the industry completely in 20 years, what are you going to replace it with? Petroleum is far more than just fuel. Without petroleum, you don't have prosthetics. You don't have roads. You don't have tires. You do not have heart valves, and you do not have paints. If you look at every device and equipment in a hospital, without this industry, all you have is 4 empty walls that are unpainted. And when we look at this other thing, we need to also look at that this ordinance isn't about the climate. It is not about cleaner air or healthier neighborhoods, because all you're going to do is start importing oil from foreign nations. You are purchasing, along with the state of California, 50% of all the oil that is coming from the Amazon rainforest. And how is that better for the environment? How is oil that is completely exempt from California's environmental regulations better for the air and for our neighborhoods? Right now, Californians, we are paying $25 billion a year just to import this oil. And so when I look at this ordinance, and this is where I'm going to conclude, is that this city ordinance is doing the exact opposite. You're going to bring in more tankers, more vehicles coming in through the ports. And as the Los Angeles Times wrote about less than half a year ago, that the biggest pollution to Wilmington and a lot of these surrounding areas is the ports. That is your greatest pollution, and all you're doing with this ordinance is going to make it worse. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Hector. The next person we have is Zoe. Zoe, please unmute yourself, state your name, and provide your comment.
Hello, good evening. My name is Zoe Cunliffe, and I am the Environmental Justice Program Manager at Black Women for Wellness, a nonprofit based in South LA, and a member of the Stand LA Coalition. At Black Women for Wellness, we work to uphold the health and reproductive rights of Black women and girls in South LA, and is on behalf of those women and girls whose health has been damaged for decades by close proximity to ongoing neighborhood oil drilling, that I want to say that I am encouraged by the city's commitment to readopting the ordinance as quickly as possible. The continued existence of oil drilling in predominantly Black and Brown communities across South LA and Wilmington perpetuates environmental racism, and these communities have been waiting for far, far too long for these toxic operations to be shut down. In addition to the quick readoption of the ordinance, I would like to urge the city to plan for cleanup as well as moving the readoption of the ordinance through by pursuing stricter regulations around site closure and remediation. Once drill sites shut down, it's absolutely imperative that oil operators are held accountable for the mess that they created, and that communities whose health has been sacrificed for so long are included in and benefit from the cleanup process. If this planning isn't done now, in parallel with the ordinance readoption process, Black and brown communities will be left behind yet again, while oil operators just take their profits and run like they always do. Thank you so much for the presentation, for your time this evening, and for your work moving to phase out these toxic oil operations.
Thank you, Zoe. The next three speakers we have are Lucy Garcia, Leah, and Daryl Gale. I will start with Lucy. Lucy, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment.
Hi, my name is Lucy Garcia, and I'm a retired teacher from Los Angeles Unified School District. And I helped get the climate literacy resolution passed. Your school should have a climate lead teacher to help everybody teach about climate. But I just want to say the following. Everybody has said so much. The dignity, the courtesy, the informed and positive approach that people have been taking is commendable. But I hear under it suffering, I hear desperation, and I hear resentment. And frankly, it's shameful that that we're talking about 20 years more. Shameful. Everything that they have said, it has happened in my life too, to my children and my grandchildren, and to me. And I want to emphasize the idea that what happens with gas should also be considered to be part of this. It has to be amended to include gas. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Lucy. The next speaker we have is Leah. Leah, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Leah.
Okay. My name is Leah Yannington, and I live 450 feet from EMB's Packard site near Pico and Fairfax in CD10. And I am encouraged by the LA City Council's commitment to readopting the oil phase-out ordinance. This is really hopeful. But yes, communities cannot afford to wait 20 years. We must act immediately because honestly, I do feel my life is in danger. And like the previous speaker said, I suffer every day from the noise pollution and the air pollution and the fear of the danger from this oil drilling site. There's 51 oil drills inside of its gates. When the gates are open, I see the oil men covered in crude oil. I see tanks of chemicals just sitting there in pipelines. And I fear for my life because the oil companies are careless, they're reckless, they do not care about anything but enriching their profits at our expense, at the expense of our democracy, as well as they sued the city when you passed the last phase out ordinance. And specifically, they have no safety plan in case of an earthquake, floods, or fires. During the Palisades fires, we received 2 evacuation notices over several days. We could see the flames up in the Hollywood Hills when it was up burning over La Brea. And sparks were flying 8 to 10 miles. I fear if even one spark were to land inside the Packard oil drilling site here, which is full of highly volatile and flammable chemicals, a huge explosion would happen, devastating the neighborhood, the city. I doubt I would even have time to evacuate. I would probably get killed. Oil companies know they have no accountability. So if a disaster happens, it's we the people who will suffer and lose everything, as we already have been losing our health and damage to our property, as they have mineral rights under our land. There once was a class action lawsuit in this neighborhood because our houses were sinking, but the oil companies have been so powerful that we were not, the class action lawsuit didn't go forward. My husband's family has lived here since before this oil drilling arrived, so they also hold the memory from 60 years ago when this was a clean, beautiful neighborhood without environmental degradation. And I just want to also express my fear for the day when Los Angeles has another earthquake and the oil pipelines burst. Not only would these oil sites cause oil spills, but all the pipelines carrying oil could contaminate the entire city. And thanks to climate change caused by these very fossil fuels, it's predicted that Los Angeles will face atmospheric rivers dumping a year's worth of rain down within several hours, causing flash flooding. We know that LA suffers flash flooding just from regular rainstorms, so I fear when when the rains come and flood those oil sites with those tanks of chemicals and God knows what they have in there. And then I also just am afraid of terrorist attacks from militia or bad actors. These oil drilling sites and oil, gas, and storage tanks are open targets. The U.S. is currently instigating and funding wars in Ukraine, provoking Russia, China, attacking Yemen, killing women and children, funding Israel's genocide in Palestine, Libya, Syria. We're going to have some enemies that are going to want to cause harm on our land. And then just to wrap up, I support the zoning administrator reinterpretation on well maintenance, because I have been with other community members having to put our bodies on the front line in front of E&B's Murphy drill site to stop them from dumping tens of thousands of gallons of acid down their wells. I know that acid maintenance has occurred at this E&B site at Packard without notification. I was never notified and not given the opportunity to evacuate. And again, the burden is on us people. While these oil men just rake in the profits, and these lawyers are paid thousands of dollars an hour to what? To lie about science, to deny science and accountability at our expense. So please do the right thing and phase out oil drilling immediately. There are other alternatives for clean energy we have now, and Los Angeles can really lead the world and start this future now, start a brighter future today. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. The next speaker we have is Daryl. Daryl, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, hi, this is Daryl. I am asking you to re-adopt the oil phase-out ordinance because on top of all the chemicals and leaking methane from active, shuttered, and abandoned wells harming human health, we have recently survived 2 giant fires. Even if your home or workplace wasn't burned down, we are all in the city and county suffering from a laundry list of burned chemical detritus. We're all still breathing asbestos, lead, mercury, and all kinds of burned tiny nanoplastic particles. Why should we have to suffer with more drilling, especially in a congested urban area, so corporations can keep profiting? Thank you, and please hurry this ordinance along.
Thank you, Daryl. The next 3 speakers we have are Margaret Alcaraz, Jack Sneff, and Cody Murphy. Margaret, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment.
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Margot Alcaraz y yo vivo en Wilmington. Me siento alentada por el compromiso del Consejo Municipal de Los Ángeles de volver a adoptar la ordenanza de eliminación gradual del petróleo que fue revocada decepcionadamente en los tribunales el otoño pasado. Insto a la ciudad a actuar para volver a adoptar rápidamente la ordenanza de eliminación gradual del petróleo y proteger a las comunidades de los impactos devastadores de la perforación petrolera en los vecindarios. En pocas palabras, la perforación petrolera no tiene ningún lugar cerca de donde los angelinos viven, trabajan, juegan, y los líderes de la ciudad deben continuar avanzando en una transición justa que se aleje de los combustibles fósiles y que proteja la salud, la seguridad y el bienestar de las comunidades y los trabajadores. De hecho, mi familia estuvo expuesta a la contaminación de los pozos petroleros, porque en mi cuadra donde vivimos había dos pozos petroleros. Yo tengo dos niñas, son alérgicas al polvo, tierra y polen. Una de mis niñas es especial, es autista y aparte pues sufre de las alergias. Y la otra, cuando le dan las alergias, su fiebre es intensa. Entonces, la ciudad debe desmantelar los pozos petroleros de Los Ángeles como una promesa a los angelinos de que nuestra salud, nuestra seguridad y nuestro futuro importan más que las ganancias de las compañías petroleras y los directores ejecutivos. Gracias por haberme tomado en cuenta en participar y hablar. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Margot Alcaraz. So to summarize, she's also a resident from Wilmington. She supports the oil and gas drilling ordinance. She would left the city to adopt the gradual phase out, as the oil and gas drilling is. Oil drilling doesn't have any space near where people work and live. She does have family that's exposed to contaminations. In the block where she lives, there are two well sites nearby. Her daughter is autistic and has allergies and it's all been caused by oil drilling and has had high fevers. Just encourages and emphasizes that the city should phase out and close out oil wells. Thank you. Muchas gracias, Margot.
The next speaker we have is Jax. Jax, please unmute yourself, state your full name and your comment.
Jack Neff, and I'm with the Pico Coalition. I'm concerned mostly with the West Pico oil drill site and Rancho Park oil operations in West LA. And I did put a question in the Q&A that I'd like to have answered. In any event, I will address that again in a separate email to the email address you provided in the presentation. I think that the city needs to act right away to close these wells because they're everywhere. And the impacts have been felt, I guess, from Mr. Gonzalez now, 5 generations over 100 years, particularly in Wilmington. But even as Wilmington and North Harbor Gateway are sacrifice zones, environmental sacrifice zones, well away from the more dense populated areas of the city, there are pockets of sacrifice zones where oil operators are allowed to get away with lying to the zoning administrator, lying to our council representatives, and it makes this very controversial. And the controversy raised by the oil operator lobbyists in the case of, think of the West Pico oil drill site, the operator is called PCEC and has been exposed as lying to the state and cleanup officials involved with trying to regulate that. And it's like this one filthy alley behind Pico Indohini that you can't go through, and when you walk by, you're walking by it. And when you look at the vegetation that grows near there, and you see the houses less than 20 feet away from an oil seep in a right of way in a regular alley joining 2 regular city streets, So I think the oil operations are an atrocity, and I want to know if the vote on this is scheduled for after the second stakeholder meeting scheduled for fall 2025. After this proposed ordinance, when will these oil operations cease if all things go accordingly to what people's interests really are? Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Cody Murphy. Cody, please unmute yourself, state your name and your comment.
Hello, my name's Cody Murphy. I'm a member of Sunrise LA, and I want to thank the City Council for their continued commitment to ending neighborhood oil drilling in Los Angeles. I'm encouraged by your efforts to pass the oil phase-out ordinance, and I strongly urge you to re-adopt it without delay. This is a vital step toward protecting public health and advancing environmental justice. The evidence is clear. Oil drilling causes serious health issues, from asthma to cancer to birth complications. No community should have to live with that. Ending oil drilling in LA isn't about shifting the problem, it's about protecting people now while moving toward a cleaner, healthier energy future for everyone. Let's not wait another generation. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three speakers we have are Adriana Martinez, Emma Silber, and Tracy Hunkler. Adriana, please unmute yourself, state your full name and your comment.
Hi, my name is Adriana Martinez, and I'm a community member for Communities for a Better Environment. And I am glad that the city has readopted the ordinance and wanted to take the moment to comment that when the oil sites are shut down and cleaned up, it is critical that operators, not taxpayers, bear the full financial responsibility for the cleanup. These companies have profited from the operations for years, and they must not be allowed to walk away, leaving the environmental hazards behind and passing the burden to our community. Our community deserves a thorough restoration of the land and air, not shortcuts or delays. As such, I encourage the city to use the shortest phase-out timeline possible so that our community members no longer bear the brunt of living next to toxic waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker we have is Emma Silber. Emma, please unmute yourself, state your full name and your comment.
Good evening. My name is Emma Silber. I'm the Climate Justice Associate at Physicians for Social Responsibility Los Angeles and support coordination for the Stand LA Coalition, Stand Together Against Neighborhood Drilling Los Angeles. I'm here to urge the city to swiftly readopt the ordinance and protect communities from the devastating impacts of neighborhood oil drilling. We know, and the research supports, as you mentioned in your presentation, that drilling has no place in our neighborhoods. Folks living near drilling are more likely to experience throat and nasal irritation, headaches, skin problems, severe fatigue, coughing, nosebleeds, respiratory harm, and higher cancer mortality, including increased diagnoses of children with leukemia. We cannot continue to sacrifice frontline BIPOC communities for the profits of the oil industry. Almost 1,000 people have joined our petition calling for the city to phase out all oil drilling. And not only must the city readopt this ordinance in a swift manner, the ordinance must also be strengthened to reduce the phase-out timeline to the shortest and most health-protective timeline possible. Communities cannot wait another 20 years to see the sites in their neighborhoods shut down. Additionally, we need stronger cleanup protections so that oil operators are held accountable for the costs of cleanup and for the cleanup to happen in a community-engaged, safe, and thorough manner. We need to plan for a transition away from drilling that is equitable and community-engaged. Lastly, I urge the zoning administrator to reissue the interpretation on well maintenance that would regulate acid maintenance operations that have ramped up since the ordinance was overturned. Acid maintenance uses toxic chemical in the midst of neighborhoods to flush out wells and allowing further production. This practice is currently unregulated since the ordinance was overturned, and the city needs to take urgent action to protect communities. Thank you so much and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you, Emma. The next person we have is Tracy. Tracy, please unmute yourself, state your full name and your comment.
Yes, hello. My name is Tracy Hunkler, and I'm here on behalf of Warren Resources. We would like to thank the city for holding this stakeholder meeting today and for the presentation that was provided. We wanted to see if we could get further information on the environmental review that the city plans to conduct in connection with the efforts that are being undertaken to adopt a new oil ordinance. There were significant issues with the prior environmental review with the now rescinded oil ordinance, including a failure to address significant impacts as to the availability of mineral resources and as failure to evaluate impacts from the plugging and abandonment and restoration operations. So we would like to ask if the city is considering a more fulsome environmental review this time through the adoption of an environmental impact report. The County of Los Angeles has decided to, as part of its efforts to consider a new oil ordinance, adopt an environmental impact report, and we submit that that would be appropriate here as well. And we're looking for feedback from the city as to the extent of SEQA review that it's intending to conduct. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to get some response from the city on that, and we very much thank you and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Tracy. The next three speakers we have are Xander Silverman, Roberto Cabrales, and Chantel Hariel. Xander, please unmute yourself, state your full name and your comment.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Xander Silverman, and I'm a clinical research coordinator at the University of California, Irvine, under the direction of Dr. Jill Johnston. And I'm just here to reiterate some of the research findings that we have held surrounding health symptoms that a lot of our community members and residents have already shared with us tonight. So over the past few years, we've been working closely with communities, conducting research on the health implications associated with living near upstream oil extraction in South LA and Wilmington. And over the years of research, we have found that there are higher concentrations of climate and health damaging air pollutants like benzene, volatile organic compounds, and methane in close proximity to oil and gas development sites in comparison to further away from those sites. We've documented health impacts on residents who live nearby, such as reduced lung function, including symptoms such as wheezing, chest tightness, irritation of eyes and nose, and dizziness. And then among the body of scientific evidence at large, studies have observed associations between oil and gas extraction and reproductive health risks, such as preterm births and lower birth weights, birth and heart defects, endocrine disruption, and even miscarriages. So given the existing evidence on adverse health impacts, it is imperative for the planning department and the city council to prioritize the health of the residents who are living nearby these oil extraction sites, many of whom which are already facing extensive cumulative environmental burdens from living near the ports or the freeways or other industries. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker we have is Roberto Cabrales. Roberto, please unmute yourself, provide your full name and comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Great, thank you. My name is Roberto Cabrales. I'm the Southern California Program Co-Director in Wilmington with CBE. I want to thank City Planning for their presentation today. I'm also encouraged by the City Council's commitment for readopting the oil phase-out ordinance. I want to urge the city to reduce the phase-out timeline to the shortest, most health protective timeline possible. I also want to urge the zoning administrator to reissue the interpretation on well maintenance that would regulate toxic asset maintenance operations. This is an urgent public health threat for frontline communities living near active oil drilling. While the city prepares a new oil phase-out ordinance, it is also important for the city to plan ahead for the closure of these sites and the need for a stricter regulation around the closure and cleanup of these sites. When sites are shut down and cleaned up, it is important for the oil operators to be held accountable for the cost of cleanup and for the cleanup to happen in a community engaged, safe, and thorough manner. For far too long, gross polluters of all industries have exploited our communities and have banked millions of dollars. But when these polluters have squeezed out all they can, then they bail out, oftentimes through bankruptcies, which gets them off the hook of cleanup for cleaning up their mess. Enough is enough. We just want to breathe. We just want to live. And I urge the city to pass this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next person we have is Chantel Herria. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Can you please unmute yourself, state your full name, and provide your comment?
Hello, everyone. My name is Shantae Harriel, and I'm a community impact worker at Scope. Before I was staff, I was a long-term member at Scope, and we've been fighting to phase out oil drilling for a really long time. And not only am I a long-time resident in South LA, but my family migrated to California from the South in 1911. So, as someone who has lived in South LA for most of my life, I've seen firsthand how oil drilling has impacted our neighborhoods. Oil drilling has no place near our homes. It doesn't belong near where we raise our kids, go to church, or try to breathe clean air. We cannot afford to wait 20 years. We really can't, not 20 more years. The phase out timeline must be shortened. Our communities have carried the burden of toxic pollution for far too long, and enough is enough. Finally, the city must hold oil companies accountable for a full and just cleanup of these sites. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Lillian, would you like to make an announcement at this time?
Yes, thank you so much, Stacy. I do see that it's 7:22 now. We do want to wrap this up at 7:30 p.m. So we'll go ahead and allow the next speaker to say their comment. I think we'll wrap it up there, everyone. But I just want to announce that, for those of you who did not have the opportunity to provide any feedback or comments today, and if you still have those as well as questions, please feel free to email those to planning.oildrilling@lacity.org. It's on the screen now, so that we're able to get those from all of you. So I'll say it in Spanish now. Muchas gracias por venir hoy. Son las 7:23 p.m., así que voy a aceptar el siguiente comentario. Estas son las preguntas y comentarios y sugerencias que podemos abordar hoy, pero si tienen algunas, si no pudieron hablar hoy, y quieren someter su comentario o su sugerencia o preguntas, por favor, mándenos un correo electrónico al correo electrónico que aparece en la pantalla. Es planning.oildrilling@lacity.org. Y con esto, vamos primero voy a dejar que hable el siguiente comentario y ahorita estoy con ustedes. So I'll let Stacy, if you want to announce the next person, this will be the last person we'll hear for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. The next speaker we have is Marcia Hanscom. Marcia, please unmute yourself, state your full name and your comment.
Thank you. My name is Marcia Hanscom. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Okay, great. I moved to Playa del Rey in 2004, so that's Council District 11. I've had a 21-year education on this topic because the first thing I noticed in our apartment building elevator was a sign that stated where to call if we smelled hydrogen sulfide or gas. And since then, due to Aliso Canyon fossil gas explosion, we learned from County Health that more than 200 chemicals were used for drilling to inject and extract oil and gas in the Playa del Rey oil field. not just hydrogen sulfide or mercaptan added to fossil gas. So it's not just fossil gas, and I hope you call it that, not natural gas. We don't call it natural oil. It's fossil gas. SoCalGas states publicly that they produce 100 barrels of crude oil each day from this field. And there are numerous schools that bus people from the inner city into this area, Westchester High School, several elementary schools, several locations of faith, and residents that are definitely within the 3,200 foot setback. To answer the question that was brought up earlier about takings, takings is really irrelevant if there's a correct amortization study done. These oil and gas operators have made a lot of money already, and so there wouldn't be a takings. And really, I do want to see, I think the planning department's doing a great job. We want to see non-conforming use for these operations. And we have to phase out fossil fuels. We are in a climate emergency. Climate emergency. And I hope that in the EIR you will look at health impacts from climate change, including heat, fire, flooding, sea level rise. These are all health impacts that will impact our communities. Besides this, on top of this Playa del Rey oil field, we have the only state ecological reserve in all of LA County. So we have students that come in from all over the county who are regularly impacted going on trails next to oil wells and gas wells. And all of that needs to be studied. So I'm very glad to see that both the state legislature and the city is calling this an oil and gas drilling ordinance, and that you realize that oil and gas are one and the same. They work together, and both of them need to be phased out. Natural gas was a nice public relations move by the fossil gas industry, but it's really a fossil fuel, just like oil. Thank you so much, and thank you to the city attorney's office for their work on this as well.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to you, Lily.
Thank you so much. Again, we appreciate everyone who joined us today. We are very, very sorry we couldn't get to the last few callers, speakers, but we really want to hear from all of you. So please email those comments or any feedback or questions you may have to our email. Again, that's planning.oildrilling@lacity.org. We really appreciate everyone's time. We know everyone took a lot of their time today to be here with us, so thank you so much. And this concludes our meeting for today. Thank you for your time and have a great night. Muchas gracias. Si quieren someter un comentario en español, lo pueden hacer al correo electrónico que aparece en la pantalla, es planning.oildrilling@lacity.org. Lo pueden hacer en español, no lo tienen que hacer en inglés. Muchas gracias por su tiempo esta noche. Quisiéramos oír de todos, así que los apreciamos si nos lo mandan por correo electrónico. Muchas gracias. Esto concluye nuestra reunión de hoy. Gracias por su tiempo y que tengan bonita noche. Thank you, everyone.